to the Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Committee meeting of Tuesday, the 9th of February. I appreciate this is an extra meeting in the calendar, but I think members were very clear that when we discussed this issue previously, we should consider taking these items at a special meeting rather than just add them to the end of the agenda to make sure that we get as much scrutiny of them as possible. So apologise for adding extra meetings to the agenda, but I think given the detail of the reports today, it's important to give them due consideration. Can I remind members that the meeting is being recorded and will be subsequently made available to the public for listening. Can I ask Claire, can we take the Sederunt apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We've got 17 members present here this morning. 4 apologies from Councillor Dick, Councillor Nicholl, Councillor Prentice and Councillor Tuckfield.
Okay. Do we have item number 2, any declarations of interest? No. Okay, can we turn to item number 3, which is the review of the Wigtown Store Separated Collection Service. Obviously, we held a seminar went into this in quite a bit of detail, so I appreciate quite a few members will already have a lot of the details that are in the report today, but obviously not everyone was attended the seminar. Can I ask the Director if you've got anything to add to the report? I think there are 1 or 2 points you'd like to make, Alistair.
Yep. Thank you very much, Chair, and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like just to spend a few moments giving an overview, a short overview of how these reports link. I realise this is a very complex matter. It's not only complex for members, but I can assure you it's complex for officers as well. So if you bear with me, I'll go through a short presentation into the first report, and then I'll do a very short presentation before reports 2 and 3. Today, there are key officers available to help answer questions for members, so we can have a full debate so everybody understands the issues that we're presenting. Now, if I can just remind members again that reports 2 and 3 are commercial in confidence. It's very, very important that we keep these confidential so that we don't play our hand in our negotiations and variation before we actually issue it to our partner. So today's reports, the waste collection report is obviously about the implications and outcomes following the implementation of the Waste Scotland Regulations 2012, and it's an update on the remodelling of the Wigtown separated collections. The second report is about waste disposal and treatment. It's the resultant effect of the regulations on our waste PFI contract, requiring a variation to that contract. And then finally, report 3 is the Waste PFI Sinking Fund, and it's an update on the health of that fund. It's the fund that funds the contract on a day-to-day basis, and it also supports the changes driven by new regulations. Now, the structure of our council's waste PFI, the council has a contract with the project company, and that contract is known as the project agreement, and we pay for the service that Project Co provide us with through the unitary charge. That is a cost per tonne for every tonne that we deliver to our concessionaire. We also pay a landfill tax escalator, because when we signed the contract back in 2004, landfill tax was only £15. It's now in the mid-£80 mark, so we have to pay over and above that £15 which is in the contract. And the sinking fund is the facility that manages that money. Now, Project Company is a joint venture between John Lang Investments, 80%, and Shanks PLC Group, 20%. And the project company have a sub-agreement with the service company that actually provides the service, and that is Shanks Waste Management. Project company pays Service Co service payments and the delivery of the services through the project agreement. Please stop me if there's any questions as we go, just for absolute clarity.
I've got Pat and then Jim.
Can I just ask at the very beginning, when we did this in 2004, if John Lang Investments were part of it, or is it all Shanks that were dealing with?
In 2004, the project company was wholly owned by Shanks, and they sold out 80% of their shares or role or investment in that special purpose vehicle that was set up to deliver the contract. And that's normal practice.
And what year was that?
I think, by memory, it was about 2009. I think 2010.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just looking at that, say Shanks Waste Management Services, they are the service who are contracted to the project, or what services does Shanks Waste Management actually supply?
Through the contract, they supply the treatment and disposal of all the council's collected waste. They supply the recycling that we carry out through our household waste recycling centres. They reinstate all our landfill sites that we had, and that about covers most of the key things they deliver. Itself is a 25-year private finance initiative contract. We're in year 11, and what that contract was, it was a design, build, finance, and operate. So the project company arranged everything for the services to be delivered. It's an output specification. There's no prescriptive requirements from the council. It basically means that at the time we asked the private sector, explained our problem and asked them to solve it. It's self-monitoring, and the key outcome is the diversion of waste from landfill, and that's currently in excess of 60%. And that target has been successfully reached, and that in itself has been a good outcome of the contract so far. And again, the contract outcomes, Councillor McClung asked about the treatment and disposal of all waste collected by our council, household waste recycling centres, the reinstatement of council landfill sites, and recycling in general. Finlay.
So what's the involvement with commercial waste, and what is there any commercial waste that the council collects involved in what we're going to discuss today?
This contract involves all waste collected by the council. So if the council collects waste from businesses, then it's disposed of through the contract.
Thank you, Chair. We as a councillor, can't remember how many years ago, excuse me, now 4 or 5, had to pump in roughly an extra £600,000 a year to keep Shanks going. Is my memory correct? And what's the likelihood of them coming back in the next 11 years for more?
Yes, Councillor Foster, your memory is correct. Council agreed to additional payments of £600,000 a year to support the contract, and there was a full report to this committee on that subject.
And the chances of them coming back in the next 11 years, it was a two-pronged question.
I don't know what the next 11 years holds.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. Regarding the waste that's collected, specifically the food waste in the Wigtownshire area at the minute, is my memory serving me correctly that goes to anaerobic digesters at Galdenoch, whose position may change following the two items that are not for public, and who owns the actual anaerobic digesters that are in the Galdenoch?
I'll let Alistair answer the question, but I think we're starting to sort of drift onto the actual debate of the reports. This is obviously just an outline to begin with. It'd be helpful to have a lot of questions in the content of the report, so careful if you just stick to the questions specifically on the presentation before we get on to the actual detail of the report. But I'll let Alistair answer that.
There are no anaerobic digesters per se at Galdenoch. At Galdenoch, the treatment system was in-vessel composting. In-vessel composting and anaerobic digesters are two different technologies. And we'll come on to speak about the future later in our discussions, but our food waste goes to anaerobic digesters out with council area.
No, it was pertaining, sir, this is public part of the meeting, it was pertaining to one of the confidential items. I'll leave it until then. Thank you.
Management in Dumfries and Galloway, as I've explained, all the waste that the council collects goes into the contract to be treated and disposed of, where appropriate, recycled. It's a single bin waste stream. The contract is set up to deliver. I've mentioned the unitary charge, that's the payment mechanism, and it's all about waste diversion, recycling, and the remaining waste landfill. The change in law that the Waste Scotland regulations bears upon us results in multi-bin waste streams, and we're moving towards no landfill. So what does that mean? It means we have to have a new collection system for food, dry recyclate, and residual waste. That's the three waste streams. And to fund that, we have our own revenue funding. We have Zero Waste Scotland funding that will be allocated. We have recyclate income from sending the materials we collect to the markets. We've moved to fortnightly collections of residual waste. And that is what's covered in Report 1. The regulations require us to recycle food waste and dry recycle it. Therefore, we need and require new facilities for that purpose. Facilities in the contract are not adequate to cope with these new demands. So we need new facilities for the disposal and treatment. And there are landfill changes because of the new regulations. We were moving towards no landfill whatsoever, and that's quite different to what the contract indicates. So these changes lead to variations being required for the PFI contract, and the sinking fund is the mechanism that supports these changes. And that leads to reports 2 and 3. So our first report, and just a very short introduction, and then we'll hand over to members, Chair. And again, it's all about the Waste Scotland Regulations 2012. There is a duty on the Council to arrange source separate dry recyclate collections, food waste collections, and we've moved to residual waste collections on a fortnightly basis. And there is now also the new Household Recycling in Scotland Charter and associated Code of Practice, where the government is indicating that it wants a consistent collection system throughout the whole of Scotland. So consistent materials are gathered for recycling. That can lead to inward investment of treatment plants. So we get what's known as a circular economy when it comes to our waste streams. We reported to this committee on the 28th of September about the expenditure and a post-implementation plan following the rollout of the collection system in Wigtown. And today's report looks at an improved model and trial period to test that improved model for further amendment. New waste streams that we collect are delivered to the Stranraer Zero Waste Park, and at the moment that is a non-contract facility. It's dry recyclates and food waste that are currently delivered. So, sorry, yeah.
What exactly do you mean by a non-contract facility?
It means that we, the council, are operating that facility ourselves, and it's not within the contract. And we'll go on, it's not within the contract with Shanks, and we'll go on to explain that in the second report.
The Waste Scotland Regulations 2012, at which point during all the discussions we've had, did you highlight that we didn't actually need to do curbside recycling of rural locations?
Right. So the regulations, as I understand them, and I would ask my colleagues to come forward now so we can answer these detailed questions. The only exemptions that are in the regulations are for food waste, where food waste can be collected in limited collections in areas of higher population, and that would be our main towns rather than rural areas. But when we presented this to committee, our recommendations were to go for a full collection for all customers so that they received an equal collection across the region, and members agreed that that was the way forward. So we didn't take advantage of the exemption cases. Dry recycle it, there's no exemption. It has to be collected from each household.
Okay, members, can we therefore turn to the report? Item number 3, the review of the Wigtown Source Separated Collection Service. Yeah.
Mr. Speedy said earlier that the variations pertaining here apply to Shanks. Do they apply to Shanks exclusively, or could members consider going out with Shanks with any variations that they may consider?
No, that's a course of action that I wouldn't recommend. We have a legal contract with project company, and we need to vary that contract. We cannot call it to an end. We can't voluntarily end it. We could, but it would cost us quite a lot of money. Now, again, we're getting into issues that are potentially confidential, and we could discuss that matter later on in the committee meeting.
Right. Is it on paper number 3? Because obviously I don't want to...
No, it's purely and simply on Mr. Speedy. The previous sheet, actually, that was on the wall, that the statement was made that variations would pertain to Shanks. I'm asking simply for clarification on that aspect in respect of Shanks and variations. Are they exclusive, or could any variations pertain to and other picking up the contract? Now, whilst I appreciate Mr. Speedy's advice may be that members shouldn't consider, members have the freedom to consider, and I think that needs to be made plain.
Absolutely, and they do have freedom. They have freedom to do so under the appropriate report, Brian, so we'll consider that point when we actually come to that report. It is a confidential report, so I'm not going to take any discussion about the variation in the contract at this point in time, but we'll certainly come to that. We'll certainly come to that. That's not the item we're looking at. We're looking at the Wigtown Source Separated Collection Service. When we come to the item, then we'll certainly pick that point up, no doubt about that. Okay, can we look therefore at report number 3, which is the proposals around the Wigtown Source Separated Collection Service? Can I open it now up to members? Obviously, a number of recommendations in the report, in particular around a proposed pilot scheme that officers are looking for direction from members on. So, can I open up to members for any questions? Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. The only question I really had was over that particular point, which I think is on 2.5 from memory. On page, it is on page 6 of 44. It just says the trial of the recalibrated system. Yesterday at a group meeting, we had the couple of things in regards to that, just to put it into context. I think there was a couple of missed opportunities possibly in regards to how this was evaluated for what we've been told, and it was maybe get clarity in regards to that. With the unions around our group room yesterday because of the budgets coming up this coming week, and as part of the conversation as we went forward, they said as part of the visit to, I think it's Southern Ireland, I think it's over in Donegal, that the joint trade unions weren't actually invited to that. I think that was probably a missed opportunity if that's the case, but clarity on that. And also, because it was in particular, it covered the whole service, particularly in regards to the refuse collection vehicles, how they operate, how they go around the Dumfries and Galloway picking up stuff. So that there wasn't an operator or a driver for that matter as part of that party of people that went over. I think that again would be a missed opportunity if that was the case, but still we'll come back to that and get clarity in regards to that. Because clearly if that wasn't the case, I'd stand corrected. But if it was the case, we certainly, I think we've missed it in an opportunity. In regards to the trial in Newton Stewart, come back to the question that was posed earlier in regards to the regulations of what applies to food in particular, urban and rural. We're only looking at a rural setting here, so I just wonder, are we getting a good enough test case in regards to the urban setup as well when it comes to, because Sunrara, as far as I can see, is the only place in the west of the region where this would apply to. So are we getting a true reflection? Are we getting is this a good enough test case when it comes to actually setting this out, Chairman? So 3 points here. 2 in regards to how we actually gathered information, did we have the appropriate people at the actual place, clarity in regards to that. And the last piece just on, we're only looking at rural in this case. Obviously, across Dumfries and Galloway, as this potentially gets rolled out, there's quite a bit of urban that needs to be taken into consideration. Is this a good enough test case in which to gather information that we need?
I think people in Newton Stewart might object to being called purely rural, but that's where the pilot scheme is. It combines rural and...
It's in regards to the food waste in particular,
yeah,
Chairman.
yeah.
It's quite clear that Stranraer is the only place in the west of the region that applies to urban.
Well, I would disagree with that, but I'll let officers answer the questions.
Thank you, Chair. If I go wrong with something, there was quite a long list there, so if I miss anything, please shout up at the end. The trip was actually to Belfast. It was Northern Ireland, and we went to Belfast and travelled down into the countryside down in Armagh to look at their recycling operations. There was a representative from the Joint Trade Unions with us who is actually a supervisor based in Castle Douglas, so he did attend. There wasn't a driver or a loader with us, that is correct, but there was a supervisor there who is involved with the activities. Lost the thread already. The Newton Stewart question, when we're talking about urban in the context of this report, we're talking about a built-up area, not the officially defined urban area, so like a town. So Newton Stewart itself has got a lot of densely populated housing, and we're calling that urban and testing it with doing the urban route and also travelling out into the countryside to get the more rural. And the 4 runs that we're looking at have got a mixture of rural and urban in them to get a true reflection of the areas that we're looking at.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for the clarity in regards to the Joint Trade Union. I think we were made aware there was a member there, but maybe not officially from the Joint Trade Unions. It maybe just as a matter of being a member of the workforce. But in regards to the urban and rural, the reason I'll come back to the point, because Colin's picked up on it, Stranraer's identified when it comes to food waste as being the only urban place recognised. We have to actually collect food on a weekly basis, I think it is. But for a rural location, but I take on board what you're saying in regards to Newton Stewart. It's urban because it's a built-up area, but just it's as far as the regulations apply and how it may well be applied across the rest of the region, Nicola, in particular. So I mean, so long as you're confident and satisfied, and that's the advice that you're giving me, and as far as that it is a good enough test case and it could be applied across the rest of the region. That's what I'm looking for, is that you're confident enough that we can use this as a test case and it can be applied across the region consistently and fairly, more than anything.
Yes, we are satisfied that we will get a good enough sample by carrying this out in the Newton Stewart area and the countryside round about.
Can I just follow up on the first point about staff involvement? Obviously, if members do agree to the pilot scheme, there's savings there, but obviously not as far as members would be keen to go. So what sort of involvement will we have when we come to review the pilot scheme? What involvement will we have with the people that are actually delivering on the ground, the drivers, the people collecting the waste? What role will they have? Because obviously they'll know firsthand what's working. We can obviously monitor it, we can watch it, but they'll be the ones that are actually delivering it. So what involvement will they have when it comes to any lessons to be learned and potentials for changes? Will they be involved in working groups and actually reviewing the pilot scheme itself?
Yes, they will. We're identifying this using 1 crew, which is a driver and 2 loaders, and they'll be very intensively involved in the delivery of this. And we'll get information back from them. We'll be out working with them as the pilot is ongoing. Also, wider than that, we're going to be setting up focus groups with our refuse collection staff and recycling staff, and that will feed into that, and we'll also look at the residual waste at the same time and involve staff in that.
Jim and Alistair.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll limit myself at the minute to the urban-rural argument and the trial period. How long's the trial period going to last? and as regard the identification in 3.25 of what is classed as urban, they do seem to be a little bit overzealous in their classification, considering Gretna at the last count had 3,552, yet Castle Douglas had 4,174, and that's no class. So let's be honest, if we decide to roll this out right across the region, it'll be us that will decide who actually gets collected. I would hope we're not going to stick rigidly to what the classifications are that the Scottish Government have done, but there's others in the area that are just as bad, that are higher than Gretna, that aren't classed. But can you tell me how long the trial period will last?
We would anticipate to run the trial period for 8 weeks to get us a good sample of information, because some people might not put recycling out every week. They might participate on and off to try and capture as much information as possible.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. I would commence my comment by saying that, in relation to paragraph 3.25, I think the definition of a rural area in accordance with the table of postcode units is bizarre, to say the least, but we are where we are. I would have to say, sir, that I find this a profoundly disappointing report. And my question at this moment in time would be, how did we finish up with the vehicles that we have and the equipment, and what was the process, Chair, which took us down that particular route? Because to me, you've got a company, Bryson's, come in here. They don't camp in the place. They come for a comparatively short period of time, and in the back of that, they can come forward with a raft of proposals, Chair, which reduces our vehicle numbers from 10 to 5, as it were, and probably proposed collection methods from one driver and 2 operatives to one driver working and 1 operative. And if Bryson's submissions and comments and recommendations, Chair, are well founded, I would have to say, without being unkind to anyone, that it's little short of a damning indictment, in my view, that we seem to have got it so comprehensively wrong, as I say, when we put in the method of operation in place. So, as I say, I would be grateful to know why we finished up with the vehicles that we did and by what process, because it seems to me that kicked it off. Grateful, Chair.
I think I'll answer that in the first instance. When we looked at this at the very start, we worked with Zero Waste Scotland on a model that would enable us to collect food and collect dry recyclate. And that model was worked on with the various routes, with the various vehicles, and with the various resources. And that model, according to the support we got from Zero Waste Scotland, looked to be sound to go forward. And what's happened when we've implemented it on the ground, it's proved more difficult than we could have predicted. And I think that is why this trial is so important. We need to run this on the ground rather than on a desk. And be able to work with the workforce at the front end who are actually delivering it, to get it honed and to get it as slick and as efficient as possible.
So, in other words, Chair, it was basically done in the back of a desktop exercise, and we did not really buckle to, from my understanding of Mr. Speedy's response, and deal with this on a pragmatic basis. Now, I'm not here today, sir, to indulge in a blame apportionment exercise. That's a sterile, pursuit. But I think, we've really got to put our hands up and admit that, in my view, from what I've heard and what I've read, we have not gone about this the proper way. And the result is that we're going to have to redress that situation now. And I would be looking, Chair, for assurances that we'll not fall into the same trap second time round.
That highlights the importance of the pilot scheme itself, absolutely. And I think it also highlights in my view, the importance that we've got a timetable here of 8 weeks, and I'd be keen to then know when members will get a report on the outcome of that pilot scheme, so we can any lessons learned from that. So we're keen to get that before we finish this item. Sorry, have we got Jim next? Anybody else? Patsy, sorry, and then Mario.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, there was one other question I had about the trial period. Can you just confirm that the trial period that's going to be carried out will be carried out as per what they're recommending that we should go to, i.e. it will be one vehicle that will be collecting everything and it will be collected once a week? That also suggests that if we're going to go and roll this out across the region, if you've got one, what we used to call in here, a scaffy wagon turning up, and you're collecting everything, food waste would get collected the same time as everything else. So that wouldn't come down to stopping collecting food waste anyway, because you would have one vehicle turning up if all our vehicles were that type of vehicle.
Yes, that's correct. Everything will be collected with the one vehicle, and the residual waste will be collected on a fortnightly basis, as is the case in Wigtown just now.
Just got several. It's about the trial run we're doing, and the previous one which we did, which seems to have been a desktop operation rather than a practical trial. Although I understand that when this was originally rolled out, Wigtown was the pilot scheme for this thing. Zero waste were obviously instrumental in that initial one. So I just kind of wonder how we got it so wrong when they were presumably advising us, and then one would have hoped they would have seen plenty of models in action and known what was a good system and what was not. And I just wondered if we actually ever went and looked at, like you've done to Belfast, taken people over and had a look and see what was going on. The other thing was with the trial that we're going to do for 8 weeks. I just wonder what you expect and what you're looking for from a trial period. I mean, what do we hope to find out at the end of the day? Is it just to see whether this system works, or whether part of it works, or whether none of it works? And I just wonder who's going to assess that. Is that going to be Bryson Recycling, or is this going to be the council that do it? And I just actually wonder who has. Why did we go to Bryson Recycling? We've normally with a council project, you get tenders in, you get people bidding for the contract to do something. I wondered if we did that with this report at all, and I also wonder how much it costs.
We went to Bryson Recycling because it was recommended by Zero Waste Scotland, and Zero Waste Scotland actually paid for that, so it didn't cost us anything to involve Bryson Recycling in this process. They came over here, that they're held up as being a very efficient organisation, and they came over here and looked at our operations in Stranraer and looked to see how we could better do things and more efficiently do things to speed up the rate of collection. The problem is that it takes a long time to sort the boxes at the curbside and put the things in a different compartment of the vehicle. And what they've done here is they've given us recommendations of how we can change the layout on the vehicle, change how the boxes are presented at the curbside, and that will significantly speed up the collection time, which we hope will in turn allow us to make the runs larger and therefore reduce the number of vehicles that we need to put out to collect the waste. So that's what we're hoping to get from the trial. We're hoping that the trial will show us how much quicker we can do these collections, and then we can model the vehicle numbers after that. At the same time, we're also going to look at the residual collections as well to see if there's any improvements we can make there. And it is a look at everything trial. We're going to look at the whole thing and see what we can do to make this better and more efficient.
That's good. Why does my heart not go whoops when you say that Zero Waste suggested Bryson Recycling when it was Zero Waste that got it so fundamentally wrong initially? But never mind. With the dry recyclers and the residual waste, why can't we just put that into a wheelie bin and be done with it? And why do we have to do all this separation at the curbside when it's all going into one wagon? And I wonder what happens to it when it gets to the depot. Does it all go nicely compartmentalized into one area, or does it all get kind of muddled up again?
We can't do it in one collection because if you just take it all in a bin, it has to be separated and you have to put in a separation plant, and that involves people and machinery going through all the waste to put it into the different fractions. What we're doing with the box scheme is the purest form of recycling, and the householder is doing the separation for us within their home, and then we are sorting it out there. It most definitely does not get mixed back together in the waste plant, and would only encourage you really to visit the waste plant in Stranraer, and you'll be able to see for yourself the layout there. There are compartmentalised bays for all the collected material, and then it gets baled up together and then sent away to be sold. So it is very much kept separate.
Could organise a committee visit and maybe see for ourselves. I would also make the point, Patsy, I think that it's probably a wee bit harsh to say that all the responsibility for this lies with original modelling, with Zero Waste Scotland. I think we have to take responsibility over the implementation. If you look at the table at 3.16, the difference between the model cost and what we're actually doing on the ground at the moment, where we're using twice as many vehicles and the budget is twice as high as it should be, I mean, we have to take responsibility for the way in which that was implemented as much as anything else. So I think it's maybe a bit unfair to blame everybody else for it. We've got to take responsibility, and we've got to therefore make sure that we solve the problem. Yeah, Alistair.
Could I just answer an earlier question? And that was, did we go in the original scheme to look at other councils? And we did. We visited councils in Wales, England and Scotland. So we did do an awful lot of research on that original scheme.
Marion, then Finlay.
Thanks, Chair. You spoke about the reduction of the vehicles earlier on. I'm just wondering, where's the staff coming in? Are we going to lose any of the staff that we've already got at the moment? Is that a concern for us? It's obviously it's one of my concerns, is how the employees are going to come out at the end of this.
The staff that are going to be lost are actually temporary staff that we have. They're agency staff that are being used. It's not permanent members of staff.
You know, sorry, Chair. You're talking maybe about 3, are we? Is that what we're looking at? Sorry, I'm not sure if it's working now. At the moment, are the staff aware of this?
Yes, the staff are aware that we're looking at it, and we propose a trial of the system.
Craig, do you want to come in? You're next. Okay. Then Ronnie.
Thanks. To make this work, obviously we've got our own staff, but to make it work, you've got to have the participants, which is the communities. And I see the communications plan just self-explanatory. But however, what additional support would there be? Because not everybody's on social media, and you know, we know from experience, you put a leaflet through, it goes straight in the bin, or the recycled bin in this case. But there has to be some way of for us to support the people so that we get the best feedback we can, because it's they're participating in the scheme as well. So I just wondered what additional support would give to the people in the trial area.
The people in the trial area are currently following the recycling regime that's there, so they have already had very detailed leaflets advising what happens in their original setup. And what we would do is give them a revised leaflet, which would show them the changes of how we want them to alter things. Obviously, they can phone us up, we can talk to them. If they need to, they can ask staff on the ground as well. So that if somebody contacts us, we'll do all we can to help them.
You've got Craig and then Ian.
Thanks, Chair. It was actually the same point, and the reason I think it's imperative that the communication side of it to the end user, of the people in Wigtownshire, and we keep on top of that. I don't think it's enough just to put out a leaflet or social media communications before the trial, but I think throughout the trial as well, we keep in contact with the people of Wigtownshire to make sure that they're fully aware of how things are going, and you know what needs to be collected and where, because it is a change for them as well. They've already gone through a big change in the waste collection system, and I understand that there was initial problems with that at the start of the collection out there, So I think it's really important that we get the communication with the householders right, and we keep that communication going until we're satisfied that the people of Wigtownshire are aware and are quite happy with how the trial period especially is going.
Yes, we'll endeavour to do that.
Ian?
It was to pick up on that same point, reference to 3.23. It's been covered though, but I think you picked up a valid point earlier, Colin, when you said yourself, when it comes to the committee actually getting a chance to go out and have a visit in regards to see what's happening. Ideally, before the report comes back, I would like to see that incorporated into the recommendations if possible.
Okay, come back to that. Patsy?
Yes, it's about the operations for the drivers and the staff that are with them. Do you think it really is realistic that you are reducing to one driver and +1, which it says in 3.19? Because, you know, you must have worked it out previously that you actually possibly needed to keep the driver in the cab and needed 2 operatives to do the recycling, curbside recycling. I mean, do you realistically think that it'll work with the driver getting in and out of his cab? You know, there's health and safety implications with all of that. There's, you know, and I just wonder how realistic this is, because it's quite different to what you had set up before, which you must have felt was the proper way to go forward with this this way of uplifting waste.
We don't anticipate that we'll be able to go to a driver +1 on all routes, but perhaps the more rural routes we could achieve this. We did see it in operation when we were in Ireland, and the driver was, even in the urban areas there, the driver was out of the cab and going along the street collecting materials, the same as the operative, and it did seem to work quite well there in the situation that they had. So we're going to review that. We don't think we can't promise that it'll be every area, but we do think it's achievable on some of the more rural routes, yes. But we will come back to members with a full breakdown of that after the trial.
Finlay and then back to Craig. Anybody else?
Thanks, Chair. I don't suppose we're early adopters with this, and there'll be councils right across Scotland having to cope with it. I just don't understand why we made so many mistakes with the first project, but we're still at looking at a trial. Are there not, you know, particularly with Zero Waste Scotland around the table, I'm surprised they didn't highlight some of the issues. Are we doing this so differently from other councils that we're looking at another 8-week trial? I know Dumfries and Galloway is quite unique in it's in the urban and rural sectors, but are we so different that we are looking at something that's completely different from all the rest of the councils? The other thing was, with the rollout across the rest of the region, obviously we've got regulations to abide by. Is there any penalties if we don't get this implemented across the region within a certain time scale?
Why are we so different? Well, I think there's 26 councils in Scotland are carrying out what is termed commingled collections, and that's what we described. The waste is actually commingled and mixed. They recycle it in the bin, and then when it gets to its disposal point, there is a system where it's physically separated under a roof rather than separated at the curbside. We decided as officers in discussions with Zero Waste Scotland and looking at the regulations that we would go for the curb recycle it, where the collection and the separation of the waste, the recycle it, would be done at the curbside. And that would give us a higher quality output.
I thought, Chair, there was no option. This was the interpretation of the European regulations that it had to be curbside recycling, and there was no option. That's why we're going down the route of 4 or 5 bins. This is the first I've heard that it was a decision that we took as members not to recycle it in eco-deco, and we had to recycle or separate in the curbside. That's news to me, that we weren't actually under the regulations forced to curbside recycle.
Well, what you say there is absolutely right. Eco-deco produces materials that are not clean and specific for recycling. The fuel that's produced is not considered as recyclate. It's considered as diversion of waste away from landfill. The metals that we get out are recycled. The stone, glass, and ceramic mixture that we get has to be well cleaned and improved before it can be recycled. So the outputs from Ecodeco are not classed as true recycling. And through our zero waste parks, we intend to improve that. You're absolutely right. The regulations say we must collect food waste and dry recycle it at the curbside. And you can collect dry recycle it in lots of different ways. You can collect it all commingled, but you have to go through another separation process. The way we decided to collect it was having it segregated at the curbside rather than in another process. And that gives a very high quality recycling. And that's what we've got. We've been very successful with that, and we've been very successful with the public. The public like the product that we've delivered. What we haven't quite got our hands around is the time it's taken and the resource it's taken to actually achieve that. And other councils haven't gone that far yet. Their commingled collections and their models that they presented to their committees indicated that they would get an income for that commingled recycling. It's turned round and flipped that they're having to pay a gate fee to get rid of that. So they have had financial pressures from that point of view as well. We're advised that this is the best way forward and adheres to the code of practice. And that's what we're trying to achieve, and we're trying to now make it more efficient, looking at the resources.
I feel that, personally, that I've been misled. I didn't know that it was an option on the table. I maybe didn't read the papers properly, but I didn't think when we took the decision 2 years ago there was ever an option or ever a plan put together or a costing to do mixed collection, and all we had to do was separate foods. I was not aware of that. So that, as I say, what I've heard today was news to me. I thought we had to separate out as fully as we are at the moment. So that's a mistake I've made.
Well, we made that quite clear in the papers that that was the way forward, and members agreed that was.
I just asked, just based on discussions with other local authorities, is there any suggestion that those that currently commingle are looking to move away from commingling? Are they satisfied that's the best way forward, notwithstanding the indication that it's giving them additional costs? But are any of them in the back of either the regulations or the new code of practice, are they looking to move away from commingle? Do we know? Is that something, option they're looking at?
I think that the only comment we can make about that are all councils are considering at the moment their collection procedures going forward in accordance with the new code of practice and the charter, because they have yet to sign up to that code of practice and charter. And we will be bringing a report to this committee about that signature. So other councils are considering that. That's all.
Okay, I've got Craig and then Ronnie and then Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question regarding the vehicles themselves. For the loading of the waste, are we able to load the waste into the separate compartments from both sides of the vehicles? Because in the Bryson report, there's a comment there about the vehicles not being loaded from the driver's side and generally from the near side, effectively. And I can see that in a health and safety term, but it does recommend altering the vehicles to include a hatch on the side of the vehicle, so that could be utilised as well, which would save time from operatives having to walk around the vehicle to load from one side only. Are we looking to implement that recommendation, and if so, are we going to do that on the trial vehicles?
You can currently load from both sides of these vehicles, but we don't want the operatives to be standing, sorting materials in live traffic. But they can be instructed, and they will be throughout the trial, where any possible opportunity presents itself. If they're working in a cul-de-sac, for example, to use the other side of the vehicle to increase capacity. We still don't want to risk the staff, obviously we don't want to risk the staff being hit by a passing car.
But in the Bryson report, it does mention about putting an additional hatch in the side of the vehicle at the back for the cardboard waste.
Yes. Well, the cardboard waste doesn't need a hatch, it just goes into an open back of the vehicle. It gets loaded from the rear.
No, but that's my point. In the Bryson report, one of the recommendations is to put an extra hatch in the side of the vehicle so that it doesn't always have to be loaded from the rear. Because there seems to be some of the problems reading through the report with the compacting of the cardboard and that as well, and it's causing an issue, and sometimes the compactor's breaking down, etc. And that's just what I'm picking up from Bryson's report. So are we looking at that issue to see if we can mitigate the actions of that?
We'll look at all the actions regarding the vehicles, yes, and do what they've recommended.
I've got Ronnie, then Jim.
Sorry, Chair, I thought the debate was coming to a conclusion there. That's why I just think it is important. From the last meeting regarding this issue, I did make a statement of fact, and I think it is important to restate that I will not be supporting a rollout unless it is within the budget. And I think that this pilot is part of the process to achieve that. And I just want to restate that I will not be supporting a rollout unless it comes within budget.
Thanks very much for that. Just on that point, actually, can I ask that the pilot still suggests a cost higher than the original modelling cost, which would be above budget? Presumably during the pilot, we are looking at additional ways in which we can save money over and above what we're proposing within the pilot to bring it absolutely at the budget that members agreed.
Yes, that's correct, we are.
Just on that, it's the only reason I felt it important to say that as well. I mean, there's been lots of talk, and I understand the concerns that a lot of people have. There's been lots of talk about reclassification, classification of what's an urban area and all that, and people want to add in different places and all that. Obviously, that would have different cost implications as well, so all that would need to be looked at.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, hopefully this will be my last time in. It's regarding the answer that Mr Speedy gave to Councillor Carson. The position that we were in when the new regulations come in was everything went into one bin. My understanding of the regulations is dry recyclable waste can be put into one bin, food waste can be put into one bin, and everything else can go into the other bin. So we would still have had to issue 2 new bins. We were not left in a position where we could put everything into one bin under the new regulations. It just was not allowed. The second thing is the report for Bryson, it says the residual collection on page 32. Our view is that the council policy to collect side waste, I take it when they're talking about side waste, they mean residual waste, because they actually use residual waste further on in the thing. What is side waste?
Side waste is what is currently available to the public when they purchase the white council waste sacks. If their residual bin is too full and they can't put all the material in it, they're able to go and purchase a white bag and put it at the side of their bin for collection.
That's a debate for another day when it comes to the code of practice. We're not going to go there. Shortly after Christmas, we're not going to enter into a debate about removing side waste at this stage, I can assure you. Do we have any final members before we go to the recommendations? Finlay?
The additional question about the rollout after this trial and whether there's any potential penalties if we don't do it within a timescale.
We have been discussing our programme with Zero Waste Scotland, and there is no indication that we're facing penalties.
I think Ronnie certainly made the administration's position absolutely clear when it comes to the rollout. Okay, members, can we turn? Oh, sorry, Patsy. Yeah.
To do with the rollout, it's just I'm really quite surprised that there are 26 councils co-mingling their rubbish, and I would just like to know what it would cost us to co-mingle ours for the rest of the region, not Wigtownshire. I see we've started on something here, but before we roll out that, I mean, what would it? I'd like to see the options. so that we make a proper decision. And if commingling is a better way forward, because on this side of the county, we have Ecodeco, which presumably is not people separating, it's a building separating, which is what it was set up to do.
I think the point was made that Ecodeco doesn't, it's not going to separate or recycle it for us. I think the point is that a lot of these councils, when they moved down that route, because they didn't have an Ecodeco plant, they didn't go with the model that we went with a while ago about reuse. They went down recycling at an earlier stage than we did, and they chose commingling at that particular point, and we started the process a lot later and chose a different model. I don't think the idea of having one system, one part of the region, a different system, another part of the region, and thinking the Ecodeco plant as a solution is going to be a way forward. But it's up to members to decide whether they want that piece of work to be done. But I think we're starting to bite off an awful lot here when we've got to get the existing scheme in Wigtownshire working, and then we review what we do around the rest of the region. But I think the focus needs to be on getting it right in Wigtownshire before we move anywhere else, to be honest.
I would absolutely agree, Chair, but the whole point is that we've got it so wrong that there might be another way of doing it. We're going down we're getting tunnel visioned when we've got the most fantastic thing out there that we promoted when we put it up there however many years ago. We got all the community councils in, we got everybody signed up to it. It was the best thing from sliced bread. And now we're saying it's not really useful. Why don't we see if we can alter the Ecodeco plant? Why don't you see if you can alter the Ecodeco plant so that it can do a commingling wheelie bin and recycle the bits in it? We've only looked at one option, which is all those blooming bins down the side of your house. Everybody hand lifting, which is such a backward step. I can't believe we're thinking it's a good idea. And we're not thinking forwardly to seeing if we can get a plant to do it for us, and that people don't have to separate it at their door side or the curbside. We're just not looking at it on a fuller picture.
In terms of the Ecodeco plant, we have to be absolutely clear. The Ecodeco plant is not going to separate recycling material for it. At the moment, it's the stuff that comes from a wheelie bin that goes into the Ecodeco plant. That's what happens there. It's not, you wouldn't be able to put the recycling material into the Ecodeco plant. You'd be basically breaking the law if you did that. But you're effectively talking about bringing in a whole new process. I think, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A whole new plant as well.
Well, I am, but is that not more forward thinking than going back to holding everything with two hands and lifting boxes and, I don't know. I just think we're not thinking this through. And what I would really like is I think we need to have the option.
Okay, we'll come back to that during the recommendation, what sort of piece of work that would involve. But we'll come back to that in a second, but I think it would be very substantial. You've managed to open up the debate again there, Patsy. Thank you very much indeed for that. I've got a barrage of people wishing to come in the back of your comments, I'm sure. Got Jim and Alistair and Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Mr. Speedy can actually just confirm that my reading of the regulations are right. We have to collect, the only thing we can co-mingle is dry recycling. So it would be, to comply with the regulations, we would have our wheelie bin that we've got at the minute, we would have a great big box or a bin for what? Co-mingled, recycle it, dry recycle it, and we would have our food. It would be a 3-bin system we're going to have to go to anyway. That's what the regulations say.
Correct. Alistair?
I'd like to go back to the comments that the leader made earlier on, Chair. As far as I'm concerned, they're timely and they're well founded. And indeed, I quoted his earlier remarks at Wigan Community Council last night when he said previously that this would not be rolled out to the rest of the region, on his watch. And I think at the end of the day, I can perfectly understand, or I can well understand just exactly the sentiments behind that. But let's assume, Chair, that for whatever reason, this scheme does not get rolled out to the rest of the region. Does that mean that Wigtownshire will be stuck with it? Because I would remind you, Chair, though I'm sure I don't need to, this authority has an obligation to provide consistent and even-handed services from Langham in the east to Dromore in the west. And in these circumstances, that would be in breach, as far as I'm concerned, of that obligation. So I would welcome some clarity, Chair, on that, if I may.
I think the obligation is we will make sure that the waste is collected in every part of the region, Alistair. There's no problem at all with that. I think the point that the administration's position is that it will not be rolled out until we are absolutely clear that this will be within the budget that's been set by members. Or if you wish to change the budget, then that will be a decision for members, but we have a clear budget and we want it to be brought in line with that budget. That's what the pilot scheme is aiming to do, and I think the leader made it clear that he's not prepared to roll it out on the basis of figures that are not going to add up, frankly. We want to be clear that when we do roll it out in other parts of the region, the budget that's set is the budget that will be delivered, and we can be clear from the Wigtownshire model that will be the case.
With your leave, sir, that's helpful and it's also reassuring. But the point I'm making is that if for whatever reason, in fact, it's decided that we should not be proceeding with this, it would seem to me that we're going to have to revisit what, in fact, has been trialled in Wigtownshire and bring that into line with what will take place in the rest of Dumfries and Galloway. That's the point I'm making. Thank you.
Points made. Ian?
Just the same point that Jim brought up earlier in regards to the regulations, how it applies to curbside recycling. I think it's implicit within the regulations. Mr. Speedy said it didn't come back to what Patsy was referring to, bring it all into the centre and kind of do it hand manually within the Eco Centre. But I think it's implicit within the regulations. It must be recycled at curbside. So just clarity on that, because that needs to be clear to everybody.
Yeah, the regulations refer to source separate dry recycling, and that's at the curbside.
Okay.
Just of clarification, I had a lot of sympathy with what Patsy said, and I found myself agreeing with her. And personally speaking, if we went back to the wheelie bin in Wigtownshire, I would be more than delighted, because it saves me roaming the cliffs looking for the bloody things after a windy day. However, if we went back to the wheelie bins and they were lifted fortnightly, and they went into a shed in Stranraer, and the cardboard was separated, the glass was separated, albeit food, we can leave it to the side at the moment, would we meet the criteria that the Scottish Government are requiring?
No, I mean, we can't go back to a single wheelie bin. I think that's absolutely clear. Alistair, can you just make sure members are absolutely clear? The regulations, you want to just explain to members so they're clear what the regulations state we have to do, so there's no dubiety here. We cannot go back to a single wheelie bin.
The regulations state we cannot go back to a single wheelie bin of mixed waste. The regulations are quite clear that we have to have source separate collection of dry recyclate and food waste. And the issue about these regulations is that they are prescriptive. It is quite clear that that is the regulations, and that's what we have to do by law. And we've explained that to members on many occasions.
Just to be clear, you cannot get below three items. You'd have to have something for your dry recyclates, something for food waste, and something for your residual waste. You'd have to have that as a very minimum. So we need to be very clear about that. Patsy?
Could you please tell me the difference between dry recyclates and residual waste?
Dry recyclates are the recyclates defined by the regulations. Greg, could you just, we'll tell you exactly what these are. Could you tell us exactly what the dry recyclates are?
Yeah, I mean, the dry recyclates are cardboard, paper, plastics, glass, and sort of metals, cans, aerosols. That's your 5 streams. Residual is sort of waste that is non-recyclable. So it's anything other than the 5 dry recyclates. Anything other than perhaps, it can include textiles, although we're collecting it separately. It does not include the food waste, but it can in non-rural areas. It can also include garden waste, although other local authorities do separate garden waste collection. So it's everything left over, so it may be recycling material such as paper towels that are non-recyclable. It may be dust from your Hoover. It could be garden waste. And those are the types of materials it could be, or other plastics, plastic film, for example. So it's all those materials that generally aren't recyclable.
Chair, in my house, we'd have the food waste, and then we'd have the dry recyclates. because everything else will go into my fire or my wood burn or whatever. You know, my dust out of my Hoover, such forth. But, so really, you could have a wheelie bin with everything but food waste in it, just about. And you could keep your wheelie bin.
You would be in breach. You'd be in, I certainly wouldn't put my nappies into a dry recycling box, I can assure you. But
I'm glad I'm beyond that.
Can we just be clear? We would not be allowed to do that under the regulations. I think we have to be clear on that. And you know, we may put our gardening waste into a composter, but not everybody does that, and therefore, you know, we have to have them separated. That's absolutely clear under the regulations. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can I just assure Councillor Gilroy there's somebody that's actually taking part in this right at this minute and filling and sticking to it as religiously as I can. You will fill your wheelie bin to get collected every fortnight, because I do, and there's only myself and 2 other people live in my house. You will still fill your wheelie bin with your alternative, and that's with recycling everything else that you're supposed to recycle. You will still fill your wheelie bin.
It's worth bearing in mind that it's fortnightly residual waste collections now rather than weekly ones, so you know, it's twice as much as previously. Okay, members, I'm going to bring the debate to an end there because we've covered most things, in some occasions twice. So I want to go back to the recommendations now. Okay, the recommendation on page 1 of the report. Are members happy to note 2.1? Well, not happy. Prepared to note 2.1. Prepared to note 2.2. I'm just thinking, Claire, just where we're going to bring in. There's a couple of recommendations I want to bring in around building in when we're going to get a timeline for the report to come back to committee. And also, I think it would be helpful for members to actually, Wigtonshire members have done this already, but for other members who haven't done so, to actually go out to Wigtonshire to have a look at the scheme first hand. I think that would be helpful, basically. So if you can think about, Claire, where we're going to build that in, as I'm going through the recommendations. 2.3, we're happy to note. 2.4, happy to agree. 2.5, I think we've considered that. Alistair?
Can I suggest so that we go for the second alternative that's detailed in the relevant paragraph? For instance, Chair, in relation to the use of social media, I think Alistair and his colleagues would confirm that, you know, in relation to flood issues in Newton Stewart at the moment, social media has been an absolute boon, you know, in relation to the resilience group operating there. And indeed, I wonder, in fact, if they could not possibly have their help enlisted in this as well, because I suppose in a liberal interpretation of resilience, they might very well be prepared, as it were, to come forward and assist and help.
Okay, so what you're suggesting, I think that should be 3.23, yeah, 2.3 and 2.5, I think. So you're suggesting that we go with, I think it refers to a collection calendar could be incorporated within this document. You're suggesting we go down that route. Members happy with that? Yeah. Okay. So that's 3.23 instead of 3.22. Okay. 2.6, happy to agree. A further report should come to this committee, and do we have a timeline when that report's likely to be coming to committee? June. Okay. Yeah. Happy to put that into the recommendations.
And again, Chair, I assume we'll have a special meeting for that, because that's not in our normal cycle. A special meeting. Is it in? Do we have 14th, a meeting in June?
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. But we'll review the agenda to see whether or not it does merit a separate meeting if required. But we'll have a look at that. It shouldn't be as detailed as the items today, but okay. So we've agreed 2.6, which includes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Are members happy with that? Yeah. Okay. And have I missed anything, Claire? I think we've got the timetable. The visit. Yeah, and we'll copy that in the recommendations that a visit will be arranged as soon as, before we consider that report. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, members.